Peace. If you guys can see me. Still getting used to this live broadcast, but in this particular video, I'm going to be speaking about the esoteric sciences of entheogens, particularly um, theological understanding of mystical plants, as well as altered states of consciousness and how they interrelate. And so, yeah, let's wait a little bit and then we'll get started. So I don't know if you guys have seen my other videos pertaining to cannabis as being a sacrament, or mystical mushrooms, magical mushrooms as being a sacrament as well. Ayahuasca, those things. Um, there's been a long history of these mystical plants being an aspect of humanity and the growth and the evolution of humanity and the cultivation of consciousness in and of itself through these mystical plants. So I want us to keep that in mind when we're going through a little bit of this information, because this subject matter is broad in and of itself, and I'm not going to be able to cover everything that I would like to cover in this video, but I will go over some things in particular that I wanted to emphasize on mystical experiences, and especially the theological understanding of entheogens. And it's pretty funny because this is a subject that most people don't speak about. It's something that it's kind of frowned upon to speak about these types of things, even though they've been around for millions of years, longer than humans. So it's only through human interaction that we are able to even understand and comprehend these plants. And I feel that it is through our, zeal and our spiritual understanding that we'll be able to understand these plants in a newer light. So I guess we can get into it. There's no reason to wait. So basically, what is specific from my perspective? I'm going to define what the theological means, and then I'm going to understand. I'm going to define what entheogens means, so then we can get a broad understanding. So theology in and of itself is the study of God. Theos meaning God. So it's a Greek word. So when we understand God, we understand it from a Greek standpoint, and it's really a hard thing to comprehend for some people, but we have to understand that the principle of God has been an idea that has been on the planet ever since the birthing of humanity. So the religions that we have nowadays are only pathways to get to that God. And remember, that's a Greek word, so it's not even encompassing a whole, the whole of humanity. So the word theos means God or deity, and it links back to the ancient word Elohim, and then the more ancient word uh, would be Neter, from our ancestors from the Semitic family in ancient Egypt. So once we realize that these understandings of theology or God stems far back beyond human culture, the way we see it now, in our present time, it stems back before this. So theology is the study of this God or this principle. Now, from my perspective, um, we're speaking about a energy. We're speaking about a consciousness. We're speaking about something that exists eternally as well as externally. And I want to also say that it's through our religions that we can understand life from different perspectives. But it's one thing to remember that the religions that we have now are only a limited construct based on culture. And when you get out of when you start to understand how culture is created, and the understanding of how culture is created through the environment and our interaction with the environment, whether it be nature or our modern society, you begin to see and understand the principle of how culture is created is through that interaction. And so you begin to understand things in a linear perspective when you go to these to our modern day religions. You begin to take on a linear perspective of God, or what we would perceive as God, energy, the energy that produce the cosmos, the energy that makes up the cosmos and exists in and of it, the causal realm of that understanding. So now that we have a basic core understanding of theology, the study of God, the study of this divine principle, the study of this principle that exists in and beyond us, but we exist in and of it, and are a creation of it, and have a mind just like it. But it may not be a human, it may not be a man or a woman, but in my understanding, it is a principle. And so, a principle made up of multiple principalities, an aspect made up of many different expressions of that aspect. And so religion is just an aspect of each and every aspect of the creator, or of the individual creation itself. So we can't just look at this stuff from one perspective, from this religion or that religion, this faith versus that faith. So in and of itself, theology is the study of God. So what are entheogens and how do they correlate? Entheogens, the word entheogen means to generate the God within. So if you look at the word entheogen, you can see in the beginning of the word it's en, meaning in. And then you have the word theo coming from the word theos, again meaning God. And then gen means to generate. And this word was given to plants, psychedelic plants, hallucinogenic plants, psychoactive plants, plants that activate the psyche. We're going to get into that. And this name title, whatever you want to call it, was given to specific plants that allowed people of a culture, persons of a culture, to cultivate and activate the God within them. And this word came from a group of scientists. They were in Wikipedia, that it says that they were a group of so-called studiers of mythology. But from my understanding, this word entheogen has always existed within the word psychoactive, and because the word psyche, right? The word psyche means the mind, and it pertains to the soul, the spirit. And the word active, we know psychoactive, meaning to activate the mind or to activate the spirit, and which means spiritual inspiration. And if we look up the word inspiration, we'll begin to understand that we're dealing with a multi-level, multi-dimensional understanding of creation of life and of God through these words, especially through the word inspiration. So when we look at the word entheogens, we said, oh, we automatically understand that these plants inspire God within us. And so the theological understanding of entheogens specifically deals with the understanding of the divine principle within the use of, within the observance, the religious spiritual observance. And when I say religious, I mean that religion within you, because religion in and of itself means to realign. So realigning oneself with the God within, entheogen, or psychiactive or psychoactive, which allows one to inspire God within. So this is what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with a, some type of misnomer. We're not dealing with some type of misunderstanding. Let's understand it in a holistic perspective. So let's get away from our limited understanding and stop calling these things drugs, and just because they're drugs, it's bad. Let's get over our limited baby mindset, right? Let's become grown-ups and speak about it. Speak about what they really are. And we can see just by the definitions. I mean, look it up yourself. You can see just by the definitions that these things are way more than we can initially comprehend them and what we think we understand about these things. Now, so we understand that what the theological understanding of entheogens means. Now, entheogens in and of itself refers to the plants that that alters your state of consciousness, that alters one's state of consciousness, and is used in a spiritual religious fashion, is used in a spiritual religious manner. And we know that religion, in Ras Timotheus's terms, it refers to that which realigns, or that which allows you to realign yourself with the divine creative source within and outside of self, the primordial substance of the cosmos. Now, I want to take it a step further, because now we understand, entheogens means to generate the God within. So let's take it a step further. Let's talk about the axis mundi. In mythology, you hear about what is known as the axis mundi. And so the axis mundi, for example, would be the tree of knowledge. Within the Bible, you have the tree of knowledge. And so this tree, any type of tree, it's a symbol. For Ras Timotheos, when we read any exoteric religious book, we read it in a metaphysical context. We don't read it in a limited mindset. We don't read it literally. We don't read it as literal things that happen. Where we don't get caught up in the politics, so to say, because our focus is mainly on spiritual experiences, maintaining one's mindset and one's spirituality, and cultivating the God within. So, the axis mundi, the tree, the symbol of the tree, the tree is also a symbol of the the spinal cord, which is a symbol of the pineal gland and the cultivation of the kundalini up the spine. And most people think that is Satanism, and you know what? I'm gonna tell you, you're confused because you're taking something that somebody else has given to you or stolen from another culture and portraying it as something else. So this is ancient science that has been on a broad scale throughout multiple cultures on many regions of the world before any system that we know of today even was thought about to be in existence. So um, the tree in and of itself is the axis mundi, or the access point, which exists, you know, between um, this world and the netherworld, or this realm, this material physical realm, and the spiritual realm, or the nether realm, according to mythology. So the realm of the nether realm would be like the spiritual realm, and but we live in the realm of the earth, which is the earthly, the physical realm, our physical, the physical 3D realm. But the nether realm would be the realm of the angels of light, or the angels of Elohim, or the angels of the one divine principle within. And so, um, we have the tree. The tree is a representation in the Bible, would be of the tree of good and evil, which would be the tree which you know refers to the state of duality. See, when we partake of the state of duality, we lose our spiritual understanding, because then we see things in a separate forms. Now, what does this have to do with entheogens? Well, entheogens are the trees, are the plants. These plants, these come from the elements. The elements in and of itself are come together to form a whole. Now, when these elements come together to form a whole, they become the access point between us seeing things linear to us seeing things in a holistic form. So when we partake of the sacraments, or the entheogens, the inspirational plants, and we inspire the divine within, we breathe in the divine inspiration through our thoughts and our minds, and we cultivate our the knowledge of sin. We then begin to regenerate the spiritual body of consciousness, our spiritual body of thoughts in our minds, and then refer to the spiritual state in which we truly are. And so the whole understanding is that, it refers to our thoughts and our, and I know this is a lot for people to understand right now, but I'm going in on this shit because it's hard for me to um you know have this understanding that I do and not be able to share it with people. And I wanted to bring it in a way that we can all understand it. So the best way I can think about doing that is to define the words, and it is the words that we use on a daily basis. So um, you know basically, we use certain plants that allows us to return to our highest state in which we truly were. You know what I'm saying? Of a spiritual being, of a spiritual nature. And so the fall initially represents the man falling into the physical attachment, our sense conscious attachment to this physical world. So the plants in and of themselves acts as the axis mundi into spiritual states of consciousness which exist beyond the physical material realm. It exists beyond our sense conscious attachments, our physical attachments. And it allows us to um, go beyond the partaking of duality. It allows us to go beyond the partaking of the ego, which then brings upon pain and suffering. Now, we're talking about um, the fact that we fall short in a spiritual perspective. Therefore, theologically, we would need an intermediary or an access point between this realm and that realm to be able to perceive on a spiritual level, because we have fell from a state of holistic spiritual being. And so from Ras Timotheo's perspective, the temple divine, what we seek to do is to build a spiritual body, to build a spiritual body of thoughts and consciousness that relates oneself to the creator, this creative substance of the cosmos, and all of its perspective, all of its aspects. And it's through the entheogens that allows us to gain the gnosis, or the awareness, the experience of awareness of the God within, and to cultivate that faith or that experience, and to bring upon a better person, a better person in life, right? That's the goal, a better person in life, but a spiritual person, one that is not of this realm, one that has remembered that they are of the creative source, and that is forever living. The creative source is forever living, right? So what entheogens do is allows us to relate back to the God within. And when we relate to back to the God within through using these entheogens in a spiritual perspective, this allows us to better understand ourselves and also build a better community nature, right? Because it's excluding nature. And it's actually being able to understand that nature is another way to say God. So when we use nature as an access point and intermediary between man, our minds, and our creator, that is the beauty of life. To understand life from life. You cannot understand life from death. You know what I'm saying? So we have to go to the life of earth, which is nature, to understand the life within us, because we are of earth and of the same elements, of the same primordial principles, the basic archetypes, primordial patterns of life, the elements. We are the primordial substance of light, Ein Sof R. So basically, our duty is to inspire the divine within, and to, you know, in a sense, you hear of an ego death. An ego death is that state of dying on the tree, dying on the cross. Christ dying on the cross is the representation of the spiritual union between that Christ consciousness and man, the union between godhood and man. And it's not death, it's the consciousness of the ego death, the death of the ego, where we realize we realize that we're one. Tawahedo, Tawheed. We realize that we're one. Union. We realize that we are generating universal oneness. So, in this sense, we have to gain a spiritual knowledge and understanding of ourselves from a non-dual state of mind and being, to then reach back to our in the garden, right? In the garden, being that of peace, being that of enlightenment, spiritual oneness, right? And you'll hear Christians say that, oh, this is Satanism or whatever, but that's their fault if they don't want to research and gain the truth within themselves. And that's what I want to tell to you guys. Find the truth within yourself. I'm not here to tell you to use anything. You shouldn't use anything without knowing what you're doing. You shouldn't do anything without knowing what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? You should research all things. and research it through the knowledge of the divine, the knowledge of the Most High, and it's all of its principles, all of its aspects. That's what I encourage you to do, is to research and gain a better understanding of the spiritual realm and the knowledge of self. See, entheogens are used as a tool to better our understanding of ourselves through a natural science, through a natural way of attaining that realization. So, we fall short because we want to partake in sense conscious actions without our spiritual understanding, without our spirit, and so we act in through the ego. In return, we suffer in a sense. So the entheogens in and of themselves give us a state of consciousness, and where we enter into the spiritual realm, where we link ourselves to be one with the Creator. So I want to read a little bit of some things written from this book, going on about trance state of consciousness. A trance state of consciousness, or heightened emotional state of awareness other than normal waking state of consciousness. The trance state may be induced voluntary or involuntary, though we are trance constantly throughout our lives. So basically, we have to realize that we are always going through states of consciousness, different modes of, and so these are different states of different feelings, different trance states of consciousness. And so they are either involuntary or voluntary. Hear me or what? I don't know what's going on. Internet. Just powerful information, guys. Understanding trance states of consciousness, spiritual understandings of, entheogens and the axis mundi to spiritual realms, to understand who we are. It says this thing is live, but okay, yeah, it's still going. Okay. Sorry. Almost thought I lost it. Okay. So trance states of consciousness. So basically, trance means to cross over. So it's basically pertaining to the crossover of the different hemispheres of the brain that communicate with each other. The right and left hemisphere, the linear thoughts compared to the non-linear thoughts. The creative mind compared to the non-creative mind, or the computive mind, the analytical mind. See, the analytical mind is the ego, and we have to get out of this understanding that we can figure everything out with our rational minds, because we know that is impossible. Just look in history. Now, my thing is, we are spiritual people in and of itself. So we have to realize that there is a causal realm, and we have to get to that level of consciousness, the level of causal consciousness, because we live in the realm of, in this physical realm deals with the realm of effects. So when we alter our states of consciousness naturally, through natural means, in spiritual ways, we inspire the divine, therefore gaining esoteric knowledge of self. And this happens within us, our own personal experience. This, what I'm speaking about, has nothing to do with one's humanity. Has nothing to do with, it has nothing to do with anything on this human, purely enlightenment, basically, through the plants. And so it's basically the theological understanding of entheogens. And so I want to read a little bit more, saying, talking about the trance states of consciousness. So we know that this word trance means to cross over. So basically the crossing of the boundaries of ordinary states of consciousness and perception. So ecstatic religious state of awareness, or trance, is induced by intense religious devotion or inspiration in the form of ritual. Trance is another word for emotional state of being, or deep emotional states, which is the capturing of consciousness, being enhanced or engrossed into an experience. Some deeper trance states can be interpreted as being a religious or spiritual ecstasy, and some initiates can experience profound mystical experience induced through a variety of techniques. Now it's going to list a couple techniques, including intense ritual and prayer, not Christian prayer. This type of prayer deals with like mantra prayer, like Eastern prayer, meditation, breath work, physical exercise, music, dance, fasting, thirsting, as well as the consumption of psychoactive plants or entheogens such as holy canu. In a temple of divine, we use the holy canu or cannabis, as well as the psilocybin mushrooms, peyote, cacti, ayahuasca, and other substances. And our sensory modalities, or modalities of perception, are channels for the induction of a trance state. So ecstatic experiences are a product of receiving new information, spiritual information, changing of the mundane understanding or values of life, and attitudes, and ultimately our behavior into a spiritual perspective when used in that particular context. And I want to make that clear. This is using entheogens in the religious context, not going out and having a smoke with a friend. This is speaking about purely religious context, of intense meditation, intense mantra, intense prayer, intense dedication to the esoteric practices, being a spiritual being and understanding spiritual understandings, metaphysical cultivation. So basically, we know that through partaking of entheogens, we can alter our consciousness. And when we alter our consciousness, sometimes we see things that are not truly there, or we may perceive things that are out of the ordinary. Now, in a religious sense, these ordinary things such as water, a glass of water, becomes, for example, the blood and body of Christ. But in understanding that the symbolism of things, right, such as plants and animals, the symbolism of things is more important than the thing itself when reading and trying to understand things from an exoteric perspective. For example, when we partake in entheogens in a religious manner, it goes beyond any theology. It goes beyond any theory. It goes beyond any type of science. It goes beyond knowledge itself. That's why it's called gnosis. Gnosis means knowledge that goes beyond mundane knowledge. So it's mainly particularly speaking about the spiritual experience of knowing, cultivating God within, coming to that gnosis of God within. Now, I spoke about theology. I spoke about entheogens. I spoke about the axis mundi. I spoke about our fall, and what we need to do is we need to open our perception into different levels of understanding, because right now we're in a lower state. We're in a low state of consciousness. As a humanity, look around. We're in a low state of consciousness, and we need to lift up our consciousness through spiritual means. And I'm not telling you that you have to do a certain thing in order to do anything. But what I understand is that spiritual liberation comes from the acts of doing work. And so whatever type of work you would want to do, such as meditation, breath work, other ritual and mantra and things like that. All of these things are an act of doing something. So don't let anyone tell you that you can't be yourself and you can't experience the reality around you. This is your body, this is your mind, this is your consciousness. And you must understand that your consciousness, your body, your mind is sacred. It's a sacred thing, meaning it's set apart. It's holy. It's set apart from nature. It's set apart from any other thing. But since it's nature and since it's holy in its nature, and that we all have that divine oneness within, we have to realize that on a whole global scale then. And then we have to realize that on a whole universal scale. And then on a whole spiritual scale. And that's kind of what the entheogens do. They activate that divine inspiration within, so you can have that type of realization. So you can have a pathway to that type of understanding. But I will be honest, it will only come in that type of context. So I'm not saying that if you go and partake of any entheogens that you will automatically become enlightened. It's based on your level of understanding. And what I would encourage is that you would study mythology of all religions, mythologies of all cultures, and study all religions in and of themselves, from the beginning of time all the way to now, the present, and get your own understanding and cultivate the God within you and the God that you have a relationship with, and we have to realize that there's only one deity, one God, though we may perceive this one God as many aspects. You know what I'm saying? And it's the union between all this, going to the pan aspect of all of it, right? Pantheist, not polytheist, pantheist, and not atheist, pantheist, because in particular go through an understanding of gnosis, an understanding of the knowledge, the spiritual knowledge of God within, But so I went over a couple things. I hope this video wasn't too long. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Those of you who weren't able to make it and watch this video, you guys can see it yourselves in a later time. But yeah, if you guys like the videos that I'm bringing to YouTube, let me know in the comments. Also, hit me up. I have books, and I'm also going to be probably doing this more often, because I have things that I would like to share. So if you guys are interested, shoot me with messages pertaining to your questions and answers, or questions, and I'm gonna get to you guys with answers. And also anything, comments that you want to even say with this video, just put it down in the description, underneath the description box in the comments. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. It's Ross Timotheos. Peace.